Hi everybody, welcome to the class for your Cadence Marbling. In this video I'm going to take you through really right from the beginning of how to work with the marbling medium, how to work with your thickening agent as well from Cadence to create the perfect medium, or size, to actually create your water marbling. Now water marbling is a technique that's been done for hundreds if not thousands of years. It's been something that has been done in many different ways, many different formations. Everyone's got their own knack to it as well. Everyone's got their own sort of technique that they like to do, whether it's the effects that you make with the marbling itself or it's what you put into it. Whether you want to do paper crafting, whether you want to do home decor, whether you want to do keepsakes, votive gifts, you name it, you can do all sorts from fabric to wood, metal, polystyrene, really anything that takes your fancy, you can try it. Now, the one thing with marbling that I just absolutely love from the off is the fact that anybody can do it. It's so easy, anyone can do it. Once you get the tools, that's it, you're good to go. And if you got hold of the Cadence Marbling bundle, the only thing you need is a tub and some water. That's literally it. So, and of course, whatever you want to dip into it. Now, I've sort of raided the charity shops. I've been through the loft and got some Christmas decorations. I've got some glass plates that we had, of course, on the show. You can check out some of those on our Highlight Crafts website as well for other bits and bobs I'm going to be using. But really, to get you started, what you want to do is make what is called the size. Now the size is, you can see I've got a water bath here in front of me, and I'm using just a storage container. You can use like a washing up bowl if you wanted to, one that you've purchased. I think they're about £1 to buy, just a basin washing up bowl. I'll show you mine a little bit later on. And I've filled it here with 3 litres of water, okay, 3 litres of water. So I've got my measuring jug, 3 litres of water has gone into there. Now, with your marbling bundle from Cadence, you then have a product which is your thickening agent, okay? Now, this here is called tragacanth, okay? I always get that little bit of a mix up, that word. But what this is a powder formulation, and it thickens the water. So once it's actually set, the water appears a bit more syrupy than it does so fluid. And that, of course, is all the beauty of making sure that the marbling paint stays level on the surface of the water so it doesn't actually mix in, okay? So what you're going to do first is put 3 litres, and I chose to use tepid water, so it wasn't warm and it wasn't cold. Well, it definitely wasn't hot. It was in the middle, so lukewarm. I found that that is the best way to get your agent to mix perfectly with the water. Now, if you use freezing cold water, you may find that when you sprinkle the powder on the surface, it will clump together like small gel particles. Now, that can be easily dissolved, but it just takes a little bit more whisking to do. Having tepid water means that it blends really, really easily and quickly. Now, I'm going to show you here because I've got 1 tablespoon left to put in here. So for 3 litres of water, you then want to add 2 tablespoons of your powder, okay? So you want to make note of that measurement. If you want to have it thicker, you can do. You can add more and it's not going to change the effect of your marbling in a negative way. If anything, it will give you a stronger size, so the water will be thicker. Now, I've seen loads of people do this over the years, and when I've done it myself, I've sometimes made it thinner, slightly thicker, and it just means that the marbling will either stay suspended on your water better, or it will be a little bit more loose. Now, before I pour this in, for example, when you drop your marbling paint over the surface, you'll notice it will spread, okay, and start to form pools, and that's how you can create your effect. If you make a really thick size, so it's really gloopy like syrup, you'll find that it will be more concise. It won't spread as freely because you've got a real sort of tension that's being created on that surface. So it's up to you, but as a rule of thumb, 3 litres of water, 2 tablespoons of powder. Now I've got a dessert spoon here, so I know I needed to add 4 of these to make up for my tablespoon. So I'm just going to add my 4th one here. Okay, and this water is still slightly lukewarm, but it has been sat here with my previous 3 spoons mixed in about 2 hours ago, okay? So I've kept it warm, here we are. And then what I've done now is sprinkle that over the top, and I'm just mixing in with a spoon, okay? And you can see it will dissolve easily. Now the consistency of this, it's of course still watery, but it is much thicker, okay? It's not as splashy. And you'll notice exactly what I mean as soon as you see yours at home, the consistency. It is a little bit like corn syrup, that sort of effect. So stirring that through, making sure it's all mixed. You just want to make sure any bubbles as well have dissolved. Now, if your bubbles are not disappearing, just take the end of a cocktail stick or a paintbrush and just pop those to get those out of the way. Okay, so you don't want any bubbles on the surface. Make sure, after you've done any mixing, that your pot is back on your marbling powder and you keep this safe. Okay, the storage for this, just store it as you would any other paint. Cool, dry place is the best way to keep it. Now, as soon as you've done all of your mixing, so you've got your 3 litres of water and your 2 tablespoons of powder mixed in, it's recommended to leave it to set for about 4 hours, okay? You can start working with it earlier. I can work with this one earlier because I've only just added that last little bit. The main body of water was already mixed. So for the purposes of this class, I've had some pre-mix ready to go. And I do have another basin here of some that I've been using throughout the week. But as soon as you've left it for 4 hours, you're good to go. If you use it a bit before that, you may just find that the water's still a little bit cloudy and it won't have fully stabilized. As you leave it for longer, it thickens up. It's like almost like when you're cooking or baking a cake, it thickens and it rises. With this one, the water solidifies a little bit, okay? It's a little bit like when you're boiling potatoes, if you're making roast potatoes and you're boiling them all, and that water that you get left over is that really starchy water, and it sort of has that sort of gelatin sort of texture. It goes a little bit like that, and you'll find the water feels quite silky. Now, also to mention, you can see I am wearing gloves. This is not essential. I'm wearing gloves purely on the basis that throughout this video, I'm probably going to be doing quite a bit of mixing, and I'm going to be going in and out of the basin with my hands, and it would build up quite a bit. Now, it comes off really easily. You can use just warm soap and water to wash it off your fingers just under the tap. It's drain safe and it doesn't stain your skin permanently. But you will find if you've been doing quite a lot of it throughout the day and you've not worn gloves, you might just have a few of the marks on your hands. But don't worry, it's not going to harm your skin. But I just wear gloves because it's just easier. So what I've got now is my basin ready to use. Again, we've left it for 4 hours. I've only topped it up a little bit with powder, so it's good to go. Before you do anything with your marbling paints, take a piece of paper. Now, I recommend to use our Craftmaster 250 GSM paper for this. There's many different papers you can use for marbling, whether it's newsprint or whether it's copier paper. This one I have actually found throughout all of the papers that we have here at Highlight Crafts and papers I've used previously, this works the best. Now, it's really interesting. Some papers almost have a slick, almost like a glass surface to them. They're really smooth. This one almost feels like porcelain in the way that it's got a slight, well, pre-glazed porcelain. It's like a tile, okay? So it's got a really good grip for the marbling paints. So as soon as you pick it up, it grips to the surface. If you were to use something maybe like an acetate, with that slick surface, your marbling ink will naturally try and resist, okay, and pull away. And that's not what you want. You want to get a really good print. So before we put anything in there, we go in straight with a piece of paper, lay it over the top of your size water, and then just pick it up from one side and let it swipe away. Drain it off, okay, and then you just dispose of this piece of paper, okay. It seems a little bit wasteful, but you could leave it to dry and use it if you make a next batch. But the thing is, what we've just done there is cleaned the surface of our water. And I've created just 2 very small bubbles there and there, so I'm just going to pop those. There we are, pop that one as well. And what that's done is taken any sediment, anything away from the top. I've been using this plastic container now for quite a few of my mixes. So what I've done is, you can see I've got some staining here on the pot, but never use anything like soap, washing up liquid, any detergents to clean these pots with. Because what can happen is any remnants of soap can actually counteract the effects of your mixing powder, and it will mean that you'll get sort of a froth or a foam on the surface, and that can be a little bit tricky to get rid of, and you just want to start crafting. So what I've got here, of course, is our marbling paints. Now in here, I always keep mine in a little paper tray or on a paper towel, because sometimes you do get a little bit of the paint trickle down the side if you're anything like me and a bit messy. You'll also notice on my mat, I have got my table covered with my messy mat. I've got paper towel around me. I've got some bin liners lining part of the table, because the second, as you saw me just do then with that piece of paper, when I dipped it in and took it out, put it in the bin, you're going to have loads of prints and you're going to want to lay them out. So if you get started, you're going to pick your first piece up and think, where am I putting it? Which is exactly what I did, and I was looking for a safe place to leave it. If you've got the back door open, you could leave them out maybe on the patio in the garden, and then they'll dry quite quickly. But paper towels, or as I've got on the floor down here, I've lined it with bin liner, and that will just form a bit of a ground sheet for us. So let's get started with our marbling, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that paintbrush that I've been working with, and I'm just using the end. Now you can use a cocktail stick for this, you could use a pipette if you wanted to. This is what I had to hand, and it works perfectly fine. So a lot of us have something like this lying around. You could use a kebab skewer or a piece of dowel, something like that. Rounded end is much better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with red for no particular reason. with all of the marbling paints, each one you want to give a good mix, okay? If yours have been sat for a couple of weeks or months, maybe you've had a bit of time in between crafting with them, you can mix them and then also take the lid off and give it a stir inside, because you may find that some of it has formed a sediment in the bottom. So just give it a good thorough mix, because you want the properties of the ink to be equal. So I'm going to take the lid off my ink here. There we go. And this is a very, very strong pigmentation you've got in here. So these are going to last you pretty much a lifetime, okay? You have got so much medium in here for the amount that you actually use. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dip my paintbrush, the end of my paintbrush, into the ink. And the second we dip it into there and take it to the surface of here, watch what happens. Straight away, it disappears and it forms that perfect haze over the surface. Now that means to you that your size is in perfect condition. That there has spread evenly all over the surface. So we can start to build up our colour. So I'm going to add a few drops, and what I'm doing is I'm just ever so slightly touching the surface of the water with the end of this paintbrush. Okay, so I'm going into it now a few times, and what I'm doing is before it has chance to spread over the whole surface, I'm dipping in multiple circles and it's forming this cell, okay? So I'm going to put a little bit more just to this side, and then we're going to build up another colour for contrast. So now I've put all of that red in. I'm just going to leave my red here to one side because we can come back to it. I'm going to take a little bit of paper towel, and all I'm going to do is with the end of the paintbrush is take the end and just wipe it just like that, and that will get rid of any of that mixture and ink so we don't dip that into our second colour. Now I'm going to take our blue, and I'm opening all of these as we go through the video so you can see how quick and easy this is to build up, because quite literally anybody can do this. So with our paintbrush, again, I'm going to dip into the blue, and I'm going to take this right to our size. There we go. Now watch, look at that. This is just beautiful. Now these colours, when you put them down onto the water surface like this, you might instantly think, well, it looks quite translucent. It doesn't look like it's going to be a very strong colour on my print. Just you wait until you dip your cardstock into the surface of this, because the effects and results that you get are astonishing. I was blown away by the intensifying result of these pigments. Now you can see I'm going in between each of the little areas. So even where I've got a thin strand like that, if I dip there, you can see how it separates it and continues to push it in different directions. And now this, what will happen is it will continue to build up that colourway. So I'm going to build a few more colours into this. Again, cleaning my paintbrush in between. Now what you could do, if you were doing a big batch of marbling and you were spending a day doing it, you could leave a cocktail stick just stood inside each one of these, and then you can interchange it. The reason why I haven't done that is because I would pick it up and forget and put it back in the other one. So I've chosen not to do that, but you absolutely can do. I'm going to go in with some orange now. So you can see the red layer that we placed down first formed the base coat. The blue has now formed that secondary layer, creating the cells within it. And we can repeat the process. So you could go back in now with red and keep building it up. It's a little bit like you're creating an acrylic pour in reverse. So I'm going to take the orange, and look how quickly this one now flares off. Okay, it's quite erratic in the way that it just spreads. So if we push it into all of those areas, it'll force the red and the blue now to mix with the orange. Put one in there to push that back a little bit so we can steer that in that direction. So you can see I've got a line here. If I put some there, that'll just separate that for us, put some in there as well. And this just really allows you to be as creative as you want to be. And with something like this, you don't need to be artistic at all. When people say, oh, you could do this, you're arty, it doesn't always apply to all of us. Something like this applies to everybody because it really is about having fun. You're creating whatever you want to. So again, I'm going to go back in now with our green. So this is a darker teal green, and because we've got more paint on the surface now, what we've created is more surface tension. So if you visualize having, it's a little bit like, okay, this is a very vague example, but when you get vinyl fitted in like a kitchen or in a room, you always leave a bit of clearance to the edge because it spreads and you want it to fit, otherwise it'll buckle and bubble in the middle. So with this, as it's spreading to the edges, there's less space for that paint to spread. So you're building up more intensified areas, which means it won't pool out as much because there's nowhere for it to go. So you'll see as we put this in, it will stay a little bit more constricted in certain areas. Here we are. So some of them staying smaller, some of them are staying larger where there's more space, but up to the edge there where there's not as much space, it's not going to push it out as far, which means we can be really playful in the way that we choose to place our colour, like putting some of the green inside the orange there, Looks really, really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into that red that we started with now to bring that back into the mix, because that's kind of all sitting towards the edge of our project. So let's put them in the middle of there and really start to bring that red back in and put it into the middle of all of those areas. Wonderful. And as well, whilst you're doing this, if you notice any paint drops below the water surface and sits on the bottom of your water bath, don't worry about it. That's absolutely fine. It will not affect the overall print that you're creating, and the next one and the next one. With one bath of water like this, you can create anything from 100 to 200 pages, okay? So that's lots and lots of dipping. Depends on how much you want to go with it. But then after that, you probably then want to change your water. And it is, again, drain safe. Just run the tap afterwards to make sure it's all rinsed through. We're then going to go back in with our blue, but then I'm just going to quickly make sure I've wiped the end of this brush. And then what we can do is I'm going to put the paper into this neat, okay, before we do any mixing, because I want to show you what it looks like without actually dragging through here, because that's another form that we'll go through. So a little bit of orange, again in the middle of that blue, and I'm really just playing with this, building this up, continuing to go in the colours. I'm really focusing now on these sections because this is where we're starting to get some really nice cell formation. So after the orange, I'm going to go in with that teal green. There we are, a little bit of that just in there. And I'm choosing to focus on these sort of 5 areas. So let's go in with some of that red in the middle of there again. Wonderful. There we are. And then we're going to finish off, I think, with the blue, because it's still quite happy to spread for us. But if I put just a small amount in, it'll leave us with a central point. Now, what you can do is something a little bit decorative at this area. You could dip with no pigmentation on here. And I'm going to do just a small little amount of dragging, because I'm just going to pull that blue one there into a bit of a swirl. Okay, so we've got a bit of a swirl going on with that. Just a bit of decorative area. I'm going to only do that with just that one area because I want you to see how this looks when you pull it off with just one piece of paper. So then you want to take a clean piece of your paper. Now as well, notice how I went for a basin that is larger than A4. If it's smaller than A4 or the exact same size, you're going to struggle, okay? Because you're going to actually find it a little bit trickier to pull the paper out once you've left it in. Now there's a bit of a knack to this. If you hold it from opposite corner to corner, it is much easier to take it out and put it back in. So with the basin as it is, print ready to go, it stays stabilized. Nothing's going to happen at this point. You could go make a cup of tea and come back and it will still look like this. You've got a lot of working time with this one. So you want to take your piece of paper, lower it into the bath of water, okay, just like this, and then each corner will go down. Now, if you were to put one side in and let it shift around and then put the other side in, you'll get what's called like a speed bump or a blur in the middle, and that's where the print continued, stopped, and started again. But lowering it down gradually, holding those 2 corners, is a great way to go. Now, you'll see I've got some sat on the surface here, here, and a very small, narrow channel either side. You don't want to start mixing it side to side like that, because all that's going to do is start to muddy that area up. So we then take those corners again, pick them up like this and take it out, and then you're left with the most beautiful print on your cardstock like this, okay? Now what you can then do is also have a clear bath of water, so with nothing in the water next to you, and you can wash this piece of paper. All that will do is take off any of the residue of the size material, okay? I'm not going to do that for this one because it's not essential to be done, but it's something that you can do if you want it to dry quicker, because what will happen is you can see at the moment it looks like it's got a bit of a glaze on there as it's wet. Rinsing it in a bath of clean water will just take any of that away. So I'm going to set this now down to the side so it's at my side, and that there will then dry. A piece of paper that's just been dunked into water like that will probably dry in anything from 40 minutes up to an hour at room temperature. If you've got hairdryer, you can speed it up. I just let them dry naturally because then they dry flat. Or it's been really sunny recently. Been putting them out in the garden with a rock on them to stop them blowing away. All sorts of stuff you can try. But always make sure you've got a ground sheet like I have here, otherwise I'd have just put a lot of water on the studio floor. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clean up, okay, for the first time ever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the bath that we've got going on, because you can see on the surface we still actually have a beautiful pattern, which is completely changed because when we lifted up that piece of paper, we drew in those 2 edges that we left. So we had all of that space left over, it's now filled the surface again. Now, what I've seen a lot of people do is they'll dip the paper in now and bin that, but I save it because you get another print that looks completely different from the first one you had. And also, these are great for making cards with. You can see I've got a couple of cards I've been making here, and they make the most beautiful projects because every single one is completely different. So what I'm going to do now is take this piece of paper and lower this into the bath. Okay, so we've got our bath ready to go. So you can see here from holding corner to corner, I'm going to lower this into the water again. Okay, just like that. Let it sit on the surface. So we have no idea what result we're going to get with this now. Absolutely no idea. But you can see as it creeps over the edge, how pigmented that still is. So let's pick this one up and look at that. It is absolutely amazing. It gives me that buzz every single time I see one of these prints being lifted up. And look how clean the water is now. It is crystal clear. Now, when you do maybe 30, 40 prints, maybe you're on your 50th print, or you've been dipping a pair of shoes into there, or you've done a cap or a baseball hat, anything like that, you'll start to notice that your water may become quite cloudy. And if I'm just going to share this one with you, and I'll come back to this clean bath in a minute, but if I just put this to one side, okay, there we are, and bring this one in, because I want to show you what one looks like if you've been using it for a couple of weeks. This one here, you can see the water looks pretty much black. Now, that doesn't help because this is a grey tub, but the actual water itself is a very dark colour. If I actually just put some inside here, you'll be able to see it's actually like a blue shade, okay? So you can see the water is actually blue. As I pour that back in, you can see it's not clear. Right, it's fine. It works absolutely fine. It works the exact same as it would do if from the second you started using it. The only thing that will ever start to prevent you from having marbling effects is when you've probably done over a couple of hundred prints, a lot of that magic sizing medium that Cadence has produced for us to let its paint set on the surface will have been taken out of the water with your print. So you're essentially going to be diluting the strength of it, but that happens over a very long time. So you can still use your water bath even if it's gone like this. Now, if you were to leave a bath of water like this on the kitchen side or on your craft room for months on end, it's going to go a bit funny because, of course, it's water, as any water would do. So what I've been doing is with the storage container has been keeping a lid on it and keeping it dark. This here is a great for you to then pour it back into, and you can work into your basin, then pour it back into a storage container or put it in a very large bag and seal it, okay? That's one way you can do it, just to make it last a bit longer, that's all. But because you get so much use out of it, it lasts so long, which is absolutely fabulous. So let's do some other bits and bobs with our size that we've just created here together. So what I'm going to do now is I still have a little bit of residue on the surface, but that's fine, that doesn't matter. That's not going to affect our next print, okay? So this time I'm going to go in and I'm going to use let's have a look, I'm going to use the dark blue first this time. So I'm going to go in with the paintbrush and dip that into the surface. Here we go. And I'm just going to go in, see a little bit fell off my brush then, that doesn't matter. Now we're really making that spread. Now because I had a little bit of residue there, look at this, what's being created. I've actually got a strand that's running through. So I'm actually going to sort of dissolve that by adding some more blue in those areas. And that's going to create a really nice effect for us. Now one colour which is magical to use is the white. Now you might be thinking, well, white on white paper, that's just not going to show up. Correct, it won't. But what it will do is form a separation between the colours so that the paper shows through. So it looks like you've actually got a piece of marbled paper with the separation between the colours. But we're going to really play with this. So with the white, again, white paint and ink is always thickly pigmented because of the way that it's actually created. So give this one a good stir and a good mix. And you can see it will be the consistency. A little bit like milk, okay? It's not like water, it's not thick, but it's ever so slightly more sort of heavy bodied than water. So there we go, look at that dripping in. It almost looks like it's clearing the surface for us. So I'm putting drops of the white in between those channels where we've got that blue, and it's creating really thin strands at the moment of that blue, which is going to be brilliant as we start to build this up because it gives us far more room to play with. Now, even if I put one into the corner there, that'll then push it back into the basin. So let's put some there, some into this corner, and I've not dipped back into my pot yet, so you can see just how much you get. From these 50ml pots, you get absolutely loads and loads and loads and loads to play with. It is brilliant. Sorry, 45ml pots. So what I'm going to do now is take that residue off the end of my brush and I'm going to go back in with the blue. Okay, so we're using blue and white for this one because because I want to recreate almost that pottery that you see, like in almost like Santorini with that blue and white. Now, what's really interesting is I've just put that blue on top of the white. Now, whenever you usually place a colour back over the white marbling, you'll find it won't spread as quick. And that's because, again, it is a thicker medium, so it's forming more surface tension. So it doesn't spread as easier, but what will happen is we can actually move it ourselves. So if I take more of the blue, and I'm confident knowing that we're getting a decent amount of pigment added to these areas at the minute. Okay, take that away, just like that, and then I'm going to get a little bit of wire. Okay, I've actually got some wire attached to these baubles, so I've got a really thin bit of wire here. If we take this and just start to glide it through those areas, look how we can start to spread it, okay? And the thinner the object that you use to glide through the marbling, the less breakup you'll create in the surface area. So we're creating a full marbled effect with this one now, whereas previously we left it to sort of just sit as we poured it. So as I'm creating that sort of action with this almost needle that I've got of wire, you can see the effect that we're getting. Really, really beautiful. Now I'm just going to build this up a little bit more, and that would be great now. In fact, actually, let's do it. I'm going to just cut you some paper to get the relief, and then we're going to do this again with another colour because I really want to see what this looks like. So in with the paper, corner to corner, let it sit in there. There we go, and pick that up. You can just see how exciting this is. Look at that. Absolutely. It is breathtaking when you get the results from this. It is just astonishing. And every single time you use it, you'll get the same feeling that you just think, oh my goodness, have I actually just created that? Yes, you have. And that's how quick and easy it is. I'm dropping paint on the surface of the water. You do not need to be an artist or an expert to do this. So I'm going to sit this one now down to the side. And I'm going to leave that as it is at the moment. I'm not going to clean up the surface, okay, because I'm going to use my same colours. So let's go back to our brush, my favourite brush that I've been using. Oh my goodness, I've lost my favourite brush. Where's it gone? Oh, it's here. There we are. So that's me not putting things back. So what I'm going to do now is use that blue again to start to build up this surface area as we did previously. And what that will do now is just push all of that marbling that we'd done previously into the channels, which is absolutely fine. And we're going to go in now with the white. This is going to create a lot of surface spread for us, so it's going to push it all away. There we are, and the quicker you go, you can chase the marbling. So you can see as I'm dotting around there, I'm not giving it as much time to spread. I'm sort of going in there before it gets chance. There we go. So let's go back in now with some of the blue. Again, it won't spread as fast on the surface of the white. It will still sit there. That's okay, because now what we've got in all of those channeled areas is blue and white mixed together in between the blue and white pigments. So more blue in these areas. There we go. Around here. And this, if you just sort of swirl it a little bit as you pick it up, you'll get a little bit more off the brush. There we are. And then I'm going to put a little bit of white just on top in the middle of that blue. Look how it pushes it like that. It's magical. You get a perfect ring, just like this. So if you were to pick that up now, you'd get those perfect circles on that paper that we did just moments ago. So let's put some of this over here. And then what I've got, I want to share this with you, is I've got a piece of dowel, okay? And I've actually glued some of Amanda's floristry wire to the edge. I've used hot glue and I've made a comb. Now, of course, you can get marbling combs, but this is a great way to make one, is I've quite literally made it, and I'm just going to then drag it through here, back and forth, and then I'm going to take some and just go that way. And look at that. That is just, it looks like the surface of the ocean or an oil painting that's been created to replicate the sea. Now all I'm going to do then is just go over with a bit of paper towel on there, and then we're just going to take that off. And honestly, it's so fun to do. Now I've got a few surfaces here that we can play with. Now, plywood coaster, you can use MDF plywood. If we just take this one to this side here and dip this in, so I'm going to take that here and just dip that. Look at your wooden coaster. Just like that, you've created a surface that, and now you can dip again because it recovers that area. So we've got a coaster. We've then also, of course, got our resin cast from Creative. Now this is a fabulous substrate. Now we could do just half of this, which I think would look quite nice, to then paint the other half. Okay, so I'm going to dip that. Let's have a look. I'm going to go here and I'm going to take it about halfway up the coaster. Now look at this. We've created a beautiful blue marble on half of the coaster. Again, you can still rinse this off like we did with the paper. It won't take the ink off, it'll just take the overdue residue of water. Now, because that's created a perfect waterline there, I can then paint the other side of it, which will then look a little something like this one that I've done with the red. So you can see how easy these are to create and have fun with. It is addictive. So I'm going to put this one to one side. Okay, and then let's have a look what else we're going to dip inside here. I'm going to grab a Christmas ornament. Okay, now using up some of this blue will look different on a gold surface. Now, Christmas ornaments, really inexpensive. I'm using some shatterproof ones here, so they're not glass. I think I got about 50 in a tube for a couple of quid. I'm going to take the cap off the top. Okay, so I can hold it, there we are, just like that. So I've taken that little cap off there. And then I'm just going to wipe it just to get any sort of dust or any marks off of there. And then I'm going to pick it up either end, and I'm quite literally going to just roll it, okay? So rolling it in there, like this. Look at that. You've created the most beautiful Christmas decoration that you would have paid a pretty penny for, and I think I bought 50 of them for a quid or something. It was like super, super inexpensive. Now, because I've used the gold bauble, it will look completely different if you were to use a white bauble. So if I just hold some white paper underneath there, you can see the beauty of all of that. Now, it will drip a little bit freely. So with this one, because I've not got a base on it, I'm then just going to stick a paintbrush inside the bauble and let it dry upright like that inside my paint pot. So I'm going to sit that inside my pot and it will dry there just nicely for us. Of course, I've got a little tree here as well, so I've got some with wire on, but what I'm going to do is pick up the rest of that now with some paper so we can create a different effect. So I'm going to go in with my paper, take this over the surface, there we go, and I'm not going to bin this again. I keep almost every single piece. The only piece that we're not too concerned about is that first one that we used to get rid of the surface. Now, look at that on here. The swirls that have been created, it's a true replication on that paper. Now, you can see here I've got a line that's formed down the middle. Now, I put that piece of paper in quite quickly into this water bath. So for this one here, you could leave it as it is. Or, of course, if you're die cutting and making cards out of it, it wouldn't even matter. It really is up to you. But you can see the beautiful print that is created from this. I also want to share one with you that went, should I say, wrong, okay, before I do any more, because this one here is a resin coaster, and I dipped it in my marbling solution on the surface, but I'd literally just peeled this out of the mold, okay, so it was still wet. And this is important. Whenever you're putting anything into the marbling solution, you want to make sure it is quite literally bone dry. Whether it's a coaster, whether it's plastic, wood or metal or something you've painted, make sure it's fully bone dry, because anything that contains any moisture at all will repel it, okay? It will instantly drop off. And the colour that I'd used was like oranges and greens, and you can see a little bit of it stayed there and a little bit of it stayed there. So hardly any of it stuck. Those, I mean, just, they must have been the areas that were quite dry. So then I thought, well, I'll do a black and white marble, and then I was really happy with the result that it created because I had flashes of colour coming through. Now, we'll try and varnish this during the class for you, and you can see the result it creates when you add a varnish to it. But even if you have a project that you think, oh, it's not gone quite right or it's gone a little bit wrong, don't worry, you can re-dip it in. And if you've got something that you're finding just isn't marbling, okay, you're maybe looking at it going, it's just not working, the marbling isn't sticking to the surface. I'm going to carry that over now and pick up from that side, there we are. You can paint it with white gesso. White gesso will leave a rough surface, okay, which will form a key for anything of the marbling to stick to. So I actually had a photo frame I was working with. See where I moved it there and got the line? I had a photo frame I was working with, and it was a wooden photo frame with like a varnish on the surface. That just would not pick up the marbling. So I used my white gesso on it, painted it all, and then it made it have that rough surface that picked up all of the marbling medium. So we've got our water bath here. You can see we've got a slight blue tinge to it. That's absolutely fine. Some of it has sunk into the bottom. If you want to, you could take a pipette, go down, squeeze it, and suck up the bits of paint on the base. Really though, it's not going to make a difference to your print. Unless you want to keep the water nice and clean, it's not essential at all. So let's go in with some different colours now. I've got a dark purple, I've got a yellow, and I've got a black. So you're going to have those 8 colours there to work with, which is just absolutely fabulous. So let's go in with some of these. I'm going to go in with the black so we can create some fabulous authentic marble effects. So with our black, I'm going to create full surface coverage. So I'm going to take that over onto the surface, and you can see there how straight away that is creating that true surface coverage for us. Now I'm just following that round. There we go. I'm going to get some more out as it's used it up. There we go. We're getting really good pigmentation on the surface of here now. And I've got small, ever so slight strands of any residue of blue on there, which I don't mind at all. I'm sort of playing to the fact that it's still there. So I'm going to put more of the black in those areas, because what I'm then going to do is transfer to our contrasting colour, which is going to be white. So of course the white doesn't necessarily always show up on the surface you're working with. So I'm going to take the white, drop that into different areas like this, and look how fast that has now spread. So if I go into these bits now, that's now going to push it out. Okay, we're going to push all of those bits out. There we go, and really make those form those cells. Even just there, and that small section there, we can work into it, even here. Okay, so with that one done, I'm going to clean the end of this and go back into my black ink. There we go, and put that on the surface. Now notice how that is not flaring out. Okay, it's just sitting there, almost contained, like it's got a barrier around it, but you will have a high consistency of marbling solution there. So what we're going to do is continue to put these pools around, and then as soon as we put some white over the top of it, it will allow us to create those cells. So clean that off, pick up some white, put that directly in the middle of the black, and look at that. There we go. It's flaring out just like this, and again allowing us to create that wonderful pattern. Now I'm just remembering where I placed that concentrated black colour, so we can continue to build it up. So put some more black in the middle, and this is now going to create a real intensified surface for us to do some marbling on. Okay, so let's pick up some white, take that into the area, there we go, into the middle of these, bring that in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that comb that we created. Again, I just used some floristry wire, some fleurs wire on a piece of dowel. You could use it on a pencil, it could be on the side of a ruler, anything at all. I'm going to go from side to side like that, and I'm going I say at a decent pace. If you go too fast, you're going to just swoosh the water around, but then if we just go in a slight wave, we're going to really sort of marbleize that water. Now look at that, we've got diagonal and horizontal going on in there. Really interesting pattern. So if I pick up with one of our Christmas ornaments, let's have a look, see what we get here. Rotate this around again. I'm just going to give it a quick wipe just to take any dust off. Let's have a look. Just going to quickly take the end off and just take any sort of dust or anything away from there. Rotate that around. Oh wow, look at that. It is absolutely glorious. It is the most wonderful effect you can create. Again, I'm going to put a little paintbrush just inside that bauble so it can then stand inside my paint pot. Now what I'm going to do is, because we've still got some surface area going on here, I'm going to take my comb back into there and just create those marbling streaks again for us. Bring some of that colour back in, and let's go in with our paper to pick that up. Okay, oh, I'm excited for this. In fact, actually, I'm going to use some wood. Let's use some wood. I've got a candle holder here. Let's rotate this round inside and see what we get. Oh, look at this. Oh my goodness. It is a perfect marble on a wooden surface. And you can see how I rotate it on the top. I've missed a little bit there. So if we just dip back in, rotate around up to there, it covers that for us. Just like that. It is so, so easy to do. So I'm going to put that on my drying mat. And just as I put that down, I've got another project here I'm going to share with you just briefly before we do our next one. Look at this. So this was a plaster butterfly ornament, and I dipped that in with the purples and yellows, and look at that. Completely different result. Now, if you're ever afraid maybe to do painting on a surface, or if you've got some home decor projects to paint, this is a great way to do it, because again, it's freedom art. It's something that you can just apply yourself to and have fun. So let's put another piece of paper down into here. Take that away just to pick up this area, and look at that. Absolutely glorious designs. Completely different from what we started with. Okay, so I'm going to put that one just down here. And then I'm just going to grab one more piece of paper, and this one I probably won't get much on here, and I'm going to just hold it there, then move it over and pick it up here, because I'm cleaning the surface now, not creating a print. But I still, oh, I'm going to keep it. It's still got enough on there still. Right, okay, so I'm going to put that down to dry. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some glassware for our last project. So what I'm going to take is our red, our beautifully pigmented red. So straight into the bath, and I'm going to work directly into the center. Okay, so we're going to let it spread out. So into the center, keep the brush there, and let it continue to channel outwards. So by holding that pigment in the middle of the bath consistently, will allow it to flare out the whole way to the edge. Doing small individual dots, of course, creates those cells. So again, if I put it into the middle, it will continue to spread out and only intensify that pigment that we've got. Putting a little bit here just to help that along the way and push it out towards the edges. Just like that, working up to the sides. I'm going to put a little bit more red just in here. There we go. And then we're going to start to build in our secondary colours. We've not used yellow yet, so let's go into our yellow tone. So again, give it a little shake if it's been sat there for a little while. Okay, take off your lid. Now, with all of the marbling paints, you'll find that they come with a foil cap and a cardboard insert. I've removed those, and because I'm using mine quite often at the moment, I have left them without any foil. If you're storing yours and you're going to be storing them for probably over a couple of weeks, you could put a bit of cling film or a bit of foil over the top and then replace the lid. That will form an airtight seal for you. You'll find minimal to no evaporation once the lid is on here anyway, but it just means that maybe if you've had a break from this particular craft and you go and do something else and you're going to pick it up a bit later on, you just eliminate that from happening altogether and store them in a cool place, and also one that preferably is out of direct sunlight. That will give you, of course, the best life out of your products. So what I'm going to do now is go in with that yellow directly onto the red, and again we're going to create those cells. So put in the yellow in sparingly, just in different areas to create that diffusion that's happening just here in here. There we go, and continue to build that up. Now the red, yellow and orange, of course, are really nice fiery colours to work with, but look at how consistent and how thick the red is now in between those yellow areas, and that's because we built up that colour quite intensely. So I'm going to go in now with the orange. Okay, I decided not to put the orange in afterwards because this is a closer colour to the red, and the yellow will break up those two colours together and not create sort of a blend. It will allow it to still have that separation. So let's go in with the orange. There we go, mixing that through. Just gently dropping that in these areas. There we go, and look at how it spreads, the orange, the yellow and red. You've still got those layers, okay, even if you drop it in between. So now let's go back in with our red, because we can then reapply that process. So red, let's put that here. So again in the middle, I'm going to put one just there as well. So this creates another cell there, and we could even put one there and there. So we're starting off even new cells on top of what we've created, which is only going to make the pattern look even more beautiful. So all the way around. And I love as well how quite literally domesticated this art form is. And it is called an art form, but it is a craft. It's something that anyone can do. So the fact that you can do this alongside your paper craft, alongside any of the mixed media that you love to do, or even if it's something that you thought, I really want to have a go at this, I've not really got much stash, this is a great one to go for, because again, you're quite literally using these small tubs and they go such a long way and you don't need a big space to work on. I'm just working here in a tub that's just larger than A4. So straight into these sections, and we're going to go in with our yellow just again in some of these areas, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with that as it is. Okay, so I'm not going to actually mix it at all. I'm going to leave it as those cells are. Now I've got some glass plates here which you may have seen if you joined us for the marbling show. Now when you're using your glass plates, really important this part is that you clean them, okay? It's not a hard part, but it's an important part. You want to thoroughly clean any glassware that you're using. Now what I'm going to do is just quickly give this a wipe with a paper towel just to make sure I've got any sort of watermarks off there as well, because of course that will show up. Glass is transparent. When I've actually washed these, I did use washing up liquid. I used hot water, gave them a good scrub either side, and then I rinsed it thoroughly and cleaned it with a clean sponge with just hot water. That made sure that the grease that is actually surrounding glassware, which is formed during the production process, is removed, and it just leaves the glassware surface. You'll sometimes find if you've maybe bought a set of wine glasses or you've bought some glass plates, or any glassware for fact that's brand new, it can have a slight smell which is very similar to white vinegar. It's a very distinctive smell. And again, that is the packaging process and the manufacturing process. Just leaves a bit of a film. Removing that will of course give you the best outcome. So what I've got now is my glass plate. These are beautiful because they're beveled, which makes it so much easier to dip into the marbling. So great advantage on that. I'm going to pick where I like best, and I'm using it so the reverse of the glass is going to touch the surface of our marble, okay? So we're going to go in, not necessarily doing corner to corner in the sense I'm curving the paper like we did earlier, but it's just easier to hold. Let's have a look. So I'm going to hold it here and here. My fingers will dip in, but we're going to arch it. So the side that's closest to me, which you can see the light is reflecting off, I'm going to have that one there dip in first and carry that round. Here we go, pick up from this side, carry that round, and you create a fabulous marble effect on your glassware, okay? Now, once you've picked that up as this is, you then want to leave it to dry. So I'm gonna flip that over and put it on my mat now to dry, because look at this, it's created a fabulous effect. So I'm gonna leave that to dry, and I'll put it onto some wet paper towel because that will absorb any moisture from either side. Now I'm gonna show you a final result of what that looks like, because then once that's dry, thoroughly bone dry, so leave it for, I would say, in sunlight if you can do. If not, good hour or so, just until it's bone dry, touch dry. You know, there's no moisture on there. You then get the back of your plate and you want to paint it with the Cadence Hybrid Acrylic, the white shade, okay? And as soon as you paint the white on the back, it makes all of the colour go wow, okay? All of the colour pops, brings it to the surface, and you can see there all of the fabulous pigmentation that you've picked up from that marble tray is then sealed in from the back, so it's not going to come off. And then you've got a plate for lifetime, which you can use as a gift. You can give it, of course, as Christmas presents, or you can have it around your home. Now, I'm going to show you one last little technique that's just using, of course, the Aquastone varnish. So I'm just going to clear a little side here for me to just put my water bath to, because I want to just show you the application of your varnish onto, of course, your coasters. Now, if I just sit this just here, there we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find my varnish, which is just here, and a flat brush. Now, when you're working with your Aquastone varnish, a flat brush that's nice and soft is always the best one to go for. It means you get less brush strokes in there and it levels really nicely. Now, I'm using the Cadence Aquastone directly onto the resin coaster, and I'm going to pour it onto the coaster, okay? And I've poured on here about just slightly larger than a 50p piece size for this oval coaster. You would want to use less for a smaller project. I'm then going to dip the brush in and push it, okay? So I'm swirling around in the recess of the coaster there, and I'm pushing the Aquastone to the edge. Right, okay, so I've put on a very generous layer in here, and then I'm gonna go all the way around the top. So that's now gonna coat the top bridge, and then I'm gonna go all the way around the edge. There we go, just using what is left on the brush. Now, we don't want to go back inside this here, because what will happen is, if I'll do it as an example, if I start to go back inside here now, I'm going to leave brush strokes like that. So we want to allow it to pull and level itself, because it happens very quickly. So now that is left like that, you can see there where I've got ever so slight 2 brush strokes there, that will now start to level. So that when it's nice and dry, you get results like this, which are just absolutely streamlined and just perfect. They just look beautiful. Now this is one here where I actually dipped one side in and another side, so it gave me 2 different effects. Then I just painted a black stripe down the middle. I did the same with this one, but I just dipped it in one side. So I dipped it in here, painted the black stripe, and then I varnished this one here as well. So you can see using that exact process and effect. And this one I dipped the whole lot in with the blue and then varnished it afterwards, which gave you that fabulous seal. I mean, you can pop your mugs on there and you can use it, and it's waterproof. You can see you can clean it. I really do hope you've enjoyed joining me for the marbling class. I've been so looking forward to this. It's so exciting, it's so fun. I cannot wait to see what you do with your Cadence marbling products, because it is one of those that we can all have a go at. So thank you so much for joining me. I will see you in the next class, and take care. Goodbye. If you want to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button, subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notification of all our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.